Infrastructure is crumbling and the problems are only getting worse. The pressure to find solutions is hot. Let's talk about why American cities have no water, no electricity, and no money to fix their infrastructure problems. Welcome to the Infrastructure Hot Seat Podcast, hosted by Chad Smeltzer.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Hot Seat Podcast. Today we have Lou Storino, who's with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation. Is it District of Greater Chicago?
You got it, man. That's right.
Okay. Good. Well, Lou, thanks for joining me on the Infrastructure Hot Seat Podcast. I'm looking forward to going through your experience there at the MWRD and learning more about how you got into the business. So we'll start it off there, Lou. What made you want to get into engineering? What made you want to get into infrastructure? How did that all start?
It all started by accident and perchance, I think. So in high school, we had a really good English program, a really good science program. And I was part of the Junior Engineers Technical Society, which was just kind of like our physics teacher just had this really cool program after school. And we learned all kinds of did cool experiments in physics. So that kind of sparked my interest in science. I was really good at chemistry. And then I was also really good in English. So do I want to become an English major or do I want to become a chemistry major? It was kind of like I really flipped the coin, and chemistry was the way. And then talking to the career counselor, he's like, chemical engineers make a lot more money than chemists. So why don't you go the engineering route? And so that's kind of how I went to school to become an engineer. Nice. After school, I worked at a consulting firm for a while. Didn't like that too much. It wasn't kind of my thing.
Not your cup of tea.
but it was in the water field, interestingly enough. So we were doing pretreatment systems for industrial users that were hooked up to the water reclamation district here. So I left that, and then I went into aluminum manufacturing, which was really cool. And we made all kinds of extruded parts through dies, and that was in the south suburb of Chicago. I really liked that. And then just by chance, the water reclamation district called up and said, "Hey, you filled out this card," which I didn't even remember, and we're given this test. Why don't you come take this test? I'm like, it won't hurt to take this test. Let me just see, maybe it'll be a career opportunity. But the day the test came up, I was supposed to be in New Mexico spelunking. And I was so upset. So I had to change my plans. I met my friends in New Mexico the following day. So I missed out one day of spelunking, but the rest is I've been here 25 years. So it's a great career change.
25 years. That is an amazing accomplishment these days. And, just going through your education, just kind of recap some of the stuff. The Illinois Institute of Technology, a BS in chemical engineering. You have an MS in environmental engineering there as well. You have an MBA in finance through DePaul, and you're active in Water Environmental Federation as well. So, wow, you went to school a lot. You were involved in a lot of education. And what made you want to get the MBA? Sorry, I'm just curious. What made you want to get the MBA then?
So interesting enough, when I worked for the aluminum manufacturer, they really encouraged getting an MBA. And so they're like, you should really think about getting an MBA. And I'm like, okay, what else do we got to do? I'm young, I'm single, we can do this at night. And so literally I started the program, and 2 weeks later I left that company. And I was like, you know what? Since I started this program, why don't I just finish it? So I just went through it while I started this new job here at the district. So
yeah, that's good. I mean, look, anything you can learn in finance these days is great. It's a great advantage to have. Personal finances, businesses, how to run businesses, things like that. That's a great asset to have. What when you got into the MWRD, when you first started, you went through the test, you finished the test. What was it like when you walked in the door of MWRD and got to see? It's a massive facility, right? I mean, it's huge. What were you thinking as a young engineer getting into that world?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it was yesterday, but it was 25 years ago. So I entered the district in the waterways group, which is something totally unexpected and totally fascinating here that we do at the district. So there's the waterway system here from the Chicago River down to Lockport, the Sanitary and Ship Canal. So Chicago River to Sanitary and Ship Canal, North Shore Channel from the top. So waterways is kind of responsible for basically preventing flooding in and around the city. And so we control that waterway. And so from the Chicago River or the lake down to Lockport, we keep the water level about 1/16 of an inch difference, which is amazing. So it's pretty flat through that 70 some mile stretch. If a rainstorm is coming in, we'll drop the water level down at Lockport by 8 feet so that we can start moving water out of the area. And so, I mean, it's quite a phenomenal thing that happens, right? And so we get all this water moving out of the area before the rain comes in. And so for two reasons: one, just to get the water out of the area and keep it flowing away. And two, like, we actually use the river system to store rainwater, like to store the stormwater as one of our kind of another reservoir, if you would say that. It's just fascinating to learn how that group works and operates, and like what's involved with that. And, you know, if you make a mistake, you might sink a barge. You just got to be careful. Like, you don't want to make the wrong call either, because then if we drained all the water out, we have to fill the river back in with lake water. And so there's a whole accounting system for that with the federal government. Wow. And it's just like totally an amazing, different kind of job.
So you obviously had a mentor when you walked in, right? You had to have someone you were working with to learn all these things about how that process worked. I mean, and kind of sticking with like when we got started and got into that world of MWRD and all those things you just described, what were some of the challenges for you? Was there any challenges? I mean, you're a very smart guy, and obviously you picked up stuff very fast, but was there any challenges when you were young, just getting into it? Because a lot of what I'd like to do is, educate the young professionals coming up, like how, if someone like they would get involved just like you did, how they would like learn from someone like you. What did that look like,
I mean, there's one like specific example that I kind of want to make. So typically, like if some work happens on the river system, like a public notice will go out by, I think the Army Corps. And so somebody was repairing a bridge in the waterway system, and to repair this bridge, they were going to fill half the river in with stone so that they can put their equipment on there, scaffold and whatever. And somehow that public notice never came through our group. So it just went through, and so the work started, and we're like, hey, half the river is blocked. So when you're trying to move water out in a rain event, it's a big deal. Like you have half the river capacity is gone there. As a young engineer, they assigned me to calculate like what impacts it would have on the river, and like the height of the river, like what happens to the flow and that kind of stuff. So it was kind of a real test of what I learned in school. So I did this whole calculation, and they gave me as much time as I wanted. I forget. I think they gave me a week or something to do it. So I pulled all my books together, studied this, did this calculation, gave it to my supervisor, and he's like, oh, okay, very good. Let's walk across the street. So I'm like, okay. So downtown, we have two buildings. We have 2 office buildings. So we went to the other office building, which I'm located in right now. And the funny thing is that it would be my predecessor in the spot that I'm in right now. So we went to see Dr. Paintel, who taught hydraulics at IIT. I never took hydraulics at IIT, but he taught hydraulics at IIT. We explained to him the problem. He looked over all my work, and he just said, wow, that's really good. The only thing that I would tell you is to add a factor of safety to this, but that's fine. I was shocked. Like, so as a young engineer, I was like very happy that like, I was able to like calculate this and
man, that had to be a boost in confidence too. I mean, just to be able to get approval from someone at that level of experience. Yeah. And to sign off on what you did, and don't forget the security side of it, because you don't want the, river flooding, over flooding or whatever is going to potentially happen. Yeah. That's interesting. So what is the size of MWRD now? I mean, a lot of the listeners might not even know how big it is. What is the MGD?
So we have a couple of different functions. One of the functions we do is we treat wastewater for like 95% of Cook County up here in the northeastern part of Illinois. So that's Chicago and 128 municipalities or communities. And then we also have stormwater authority over all of Cook County. So that's our kind of basic functions. And then we have about 1,800 employees to handle that. And kind of one of the other kind of mind-blowing things here, and that I would encourage anybody that's studying at school or looking for a job, is that we hire anybody from laborers. We have an excellent trade pool, machinists, electricians, EITMs, you name it. And then, we have engineering techs, we have lab workers, we have finance people, pretty much any kind of job you want. We have it here at the district, and pretty much, it's a challenge for the water sector as a whole. I think we're probably not as sexy as some other, sector in the economy, to work for, but it's a great job, and it's kind of fascinating. Like, it's just, when I came here to learn all the different kind of aspects and things that we do here, it was amazing. I felt like this is a place for me. I can really grow and learn a lot at this organization.
Yeah.
So that's just, one of the great things. But I do see the water sector as a whole is aging. Like myself, I'm aging here at work.
Yeah.
And, we're looking more towards retirement than we are, but also we're looking at to see who can fill our shoes. So how do we attract people like to get into the water sector, maybe not only work for our organization, but all the other municipalities here and around. The city of Chicago's got a great Department of Water Management. They focus on drinking water, but then they also do sewers for the city of Chicago. Those sewers will flow into our sewers here at the district. We take it to the treatment plant, we treat it, then it goes down the river all the way down to the Mississippi. So.
Yeah. And what's the MGD daily now? I'm just curious.
So we, on an average a day, treat close to 1 billion gallons with a B, 1 billion gallons, and then storm flows can go up to 2 billion gallons. So we're pretty large agency. We have 7 water treatment plants throughout the county.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot, man. I can only imagine in the storms, because there's combined systems in Chicago, for example. I've seen the videos when they get a storm event, man. I've seen manholes popping in videos, so I can imagine that'd be very tough to deal with. So there's, the things I've seen in the news is like storm wastewater management, right? It's like storing that wastewater, because you can't take another billion gallons. Generally, I'm sure you guys have adopted that to that now, and you have storage. And I know you use a quarry for that now, and that was a huge project like several years ago, right? But can you elaborate more on like how that storage system works? And
Absolutely,
that's
that's really cool. Normal dry weather day like today, we're actually in a drought condition here up in Cook County. And so I think they just declared it as a severe drought condition, but. So on a typical dry day, the water, you flush your toilet or you're washing your dishes at home, running the dishwasher. It goes from your house in most communities to the middle of the street, and that sewer will take it over, eventually finds its way to the wastewater treatment plant and gets cleaned. In Chicago, where we have combined sewers, when it rains, the stormwater also goes in and gets mixed with the sewage and goes through the system. And so with an intense storm, it's possible that we don't have the conveyance capacity to get that water all the way to the treatment plant right when it's raining. So a solution that was developed back in 1972 was the Deep Tunnel Program, or TARP as we call it here, the Tunnel Reservoir Plan, which is what you alluded to. So the TARP tunnels, I think the first ones went online in 1982, and they were completed in about 2003. And we have 3 large storage reservoirs to hold that stormwater. So the one in Thornton, in the Thornton Quarry, is completed. It holds 7.9 billion gallons of water. We have one at McCook that the first stage is completed. It holds 3.5 billion gallons, scheduled to be completed in 2029. And when it's done, should hold 10 billion gallons of water. And then we have a smaller one, the Majewski Reservoir, that's near O'Hare Airport. So those are functioning. They're doing well. But as you know, like the intensity and frequency of storms is increasing. Like we know climate change is real. This is kind of some of the effects of climate change. And so what we're really trying to do is really prepare for those storms. And so I think the best way to prepare for those is kind of treat or at least capture some of the storm water through either green infrastructure or some other approaches before it reaches the sewer system. So we're working with and partnering with communities all over the county to actually, look at different stormwater solutions. So, for instance, in my neighborhood in Chicago, they redeveloped Fullerton Avenue 2 years ago, and on most of every other corner, they put in some green infrastructure feature to capture that water that falls onto the street, and they collect it into this little green infrastructure on the corner. It looks like a little landscaped area on the corner, usually right where the 2 sidewalks intersect there. And the water will flow into there, and then it'll just percolate into the soil. So we're capturing it before it gets into the sewer system, so that the sewer system has a greater opportunity to convey flow, where it's supposed to go to the treatment plant and not be in somebody's basement. Because the last thing I want, I got carpet in my basement, I got an entertainment center down there. The last thing I want is 2 feet of sewage in my basement.
Yeah, that's climate change, and you mentioned a couple of different things there. At 10 billion gallons of retention, right? That you can handle. You're getting to that point, right? With the next project getting finished at 10 billion gallons. You guys are planning for some it sounds like at 10 billion, that's a lot of storage you're going to need. Are you anticipating the storms that we're talking about, you're planning for some big storms. Like, I know I live in Aurora, so I'm not far from Chicago, but we've gotten 12-inch rainstorms a couple years ago here that really flooded everything. It devastated everything. And are you anticipating that we're going to see a lot more of those?
Yeah, I think the frequency of those storms are they're going to increase. One of the hard things, I'm not a weather forecaster, but
right.
Like you said, in Aurora, you had that crazy storm, and we probably didn't see much up on the north side here of Chicago. Just this March, there was some local intense storms, but it only hit like 3 wards of Chicago, maybe one of the 2 of the north side communities. So our whole system is running well. But in those areas, the local systems, like you were saying, geysered, and so the water's got no place to go. The air is, what happens is there's normally air and water in the sewer. So when the storm comes, the air's got to come out of the sewer as the water is filling that. And so when that intense storm comes and water is just rushing so fast into the sewer system, that air is really getting pushed out. And sometimes water gets into that air, and then you just see these like geysers, like Old Faithful, like coming up, and you don't want to be anywhere near that. You don't want to drive your car over that. You don't want to be standing by that. We've seen, I forget how heavy a sewer cover is, like 250 pounds of cast iron just get blown off like hundreds of feet away. It's just crazy. And so
it is crazy.
And so by, putting some of this green infrastructure, we want to take some of that so the load is not on the sewer system. Because here in Chicago, in the Chicago area, even some of our treatment plants, they date back to the 1930s. And so we still have sewers that date back to the 1930s. They do have relief points into the river system. And so really TARP was designed to capture that water before it gets released to the river, to make sure that the river water stays clean. So a lot of different functions, a lot of different functionality there. But
I'm curious about the green initiative you're talking about with retaining, capturing the rainwater and reusing it into the soil and, using for plants and things like that. How big could that type of program get? Would it be like, I would assume that's very difficult to get people to accept it or implement it. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So on a regional level, there's some large scale projects that can happen. So what happens is as the river water kind of rises, you can provide like off stream bank storage of that water in a reservoir located near the river system, right? So in some communities we have that. I think we're putting one in on Addison Creek, a very large one. So as the river level rises, water will spill into this reservoir. So you have like off bank storage. And then once the river goes down, it can get released back into the river system. So that's one approach. But as you know, Aurora is getting built up. The Chicago area is already built up, but we're still looking for places to build more stuff. Every time you come downtown, there's a new skyscraper here. But also as you go around in different suburban communities, more and more homes are getting built, businesses are getting built. And so instead of that water going right into the soil where it used to be a grass field, now you got a roof, you got a parking lot, you got your driveway, all kinds of things that are impervious. So the water's got no place to go except into the street. And most new development, almost all new developments, it doesn't go in the sewer anymore. We try to keep that separate.
Right.
So, one program that we have is planting more trees. So the trees will soak up water. Another program that we have is rain barrels. So people can put rain barrels to try to capture the water on their own property from their roof. And then once the rain stops, you've got some water to water your plants or your grass or something like that. So that's what somebody can do, like on their own property, on their own. But on a regional scale, then we also kind of look at in different communities if there's abandoned parcels of land. So the Cook County Land Bank has a lot of abandoned property. So we look in areas that experience flooding, like, is this an opportunity where we can get this land pretty much at no cost from Cook County and then develop some kind of green infrastructure, maybe even a green infrastructure park where there's amenities of a park alongside with storage. And you'll see that sometimes in different communities have soccer fields, but then when it rains, it just gets flooded because that's actually their storage for rainwater. And then when it's dry, people are playing soccer on there, so there can be like multiple uses of the same piece of land. So we're kind of looking at all these opportunities. The options are somewhat endless. It's just the resources are in terms of money to fund this stuff is not endless. And that's kind of where where we have to manage the resources that we have in the best possible way to benefit the most number of people.
Speaking of money, I did some researching today, and apparently, according to the American Society of Civil Engineering, we're at a $4.8 trillion investment gap in water and sewer in the country. That's a massive number. Like, I don't know if you can speak to that. I just wanted to throw it at you, Lou, to see if you had any response to that. But how, MWRD, has been, there's a lot of aging infrastructure in the Chicago sewer system. I mean, the pipes are getting older, the plants are getting older quickly. We're getting required to, remove PFAS now, lead, all this stuff that's maybe not, it's on more water side, but it does go to the sewer because eventually it's got to be treated, right? So whatever contaminants get into the water you got to get treated at the plant to get removed. With the amount of gap that's there, is there what is your perspective on it? I guess is where I'm going with this one.
It is a real struggle, and I guess the sad part of it is that number is probably too low. It's probably much greater than what they're reporting. But having said that, again, so the federal government recently has, with the latest infrastructure package, has really addressed or really heard the alarm bells from water and sewer districts that the funding, we need additional funding to help, not only for the new initiatives, like you're saying, like PFAS treatment, in the drinking water side, the lead in the pipes is totally not acceptable at all, right? That needs to get replaced as soon as possible. But again, the funding is not there for most municipalities to do that, because where you're going to get the money from, you get it from your residents. Can they handle a huge rate increase? Probably not. A lot of these communities are, disadvantaged and don't have the resources to do that. So you need help from the federal government. So really applaud the federal government in, making more resources available. But again, not enough is being made available. There still needs to be, there's a huge funding gap. There needs to be a lot more made available. But there are some resources besides federal grants. There's a low interest rate program that the state has through IEPA for low interest loans for capital projects for both drinking and on the wastewater side. So the district participates in those. We're always looking for grant money. We apply for low interest loans like all the other municipalities do to try to tap into some of those resources to protect our ratepayers from, really rate increases. So,
yeah. And kind of pivoting to, money's desperately needed. Obviously that is, I'm going to talk about ICAP. The ICAP program that was established by MWRD years ago, right, to remove clean water from getting into the sewer systems, kind of like we were just talking about previously. How's that program going? I was a part of it, and then I obviously, when I got out of what I was doing and then starting this, I hadn't really heard too much about it in the industry. But what is going on with that program and the satellite communities, and is it working? I guess is kind of where
I guess to help the viewers out a little bit of what we're talking about here. And so what we try to do with that program is we try to minimize inflow and infiltration from coming into the sewer system. So basically, like you said, you don't want clean water getting into the sewer system, because then that water needs to be treated at the treatment plant and it doesn't help anybody out. So how does that water get into the sewer system? And Chad, probably this better than I do, but basically a tree root breaks through the sewer system, and now you got a hole in your sewer. And so when it rains, water finds its way through that hole and it comes in, and that that happens at your house 3 houses down along the system. And then all of a sudden when it rains, you got lots and lots of water coming into your sewer system. So one important thing is to make people aware of that, right? And so the ICAP program helps municipalities realize hey, you got a problem, right? And so we need to fix this problem. And so when I always say that wastewater treatment and even drinking water is not sexy because it's all underground, nobody sees it until it breaks, and then I got to rip open your street and it's closed for 3 weeks because we got to fix a problem in the sewer system. And so just to digress a little bit, fixing problems in the sewer system has come a long way with trenchless technology. So a lot of stuff you can do just from going through a manhole and fixing it from the inside. So to minimize disruption to people up on top. But sometimes if you have a major break and the street collapses, which is what we try to prevent, but
Right.
if that happens, then there's disruption obviously at the surface, whether it's on your block or a major intersection or on the highway or whatever, wherever it is. But with the ICAP program, what we try to do is reduce that inflow and infiltration through lining of sewers, identifying where the water is coming in. And so we work with local communities, and I'd say we got a pretty good success rate in this area. It's not my area of expertise, so I'm going to guess we're probably around 60 to 70% compliance with all the municipalities that feed into us, and we're working with the other municipalities to get them in compliance with that program too, so that we're not unnecessarily wasting resources by treating clean water.
Yeah, it was a interesting program because trying to get satellite communities to actually do maintenance, because I'll be honest, they're not as progressive, right, as what we're doing at MWRD. They don't have the budget money to do those kind of things sometimes, and it was removing, disconnecting like sub pump hookups, illegal hookups, things like that. That's something that a lot of communities just didn't want to do, or they still don't want to do, those kind of things. And it's still happening, I'm sure, in many communities, but it's very hard to get them to comply or to actually go in and disconnect. And, for a mayor, it's even worse because you're like, oh, we're just going to go into people's houses and tell them they got to disconnect. As a government official, it's hard to just like start doing those kind of programs. But yeah, I was just curious on because I haven't been a part of that for a while. I haven't heard anything about it, and to just get an update on like how the ICAP program is working. So I appreciate that information. You mentioned something at the beginning about employees. We're in this labor shortage, and MWRD sounds like they're hiring, correct? I mean, it's just like everybody
else. We are hiring in all levels, and
all levels. Okay.
Like the thing about the labor shortage, like we're experiencing that just like everybody else is. That it's hard to find people that want to come work for us. And at the time that I started, people waited 3, 5, 7 years just to get in the door here. And so for us old timers, it's kind of a surprise, like, oh my God, like the job market has really changed. And so as an agency, we have to kind of look at that and say, okay, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Is there any way we can improve to make ourselves more attractive to somebody that's looking for a job? So we offer a very competitive starting wage at all levels. So whether you're coming in, as a laborer or a lab technician, or you're coming in as a research scientist 3, or an engineer or whatever, wherever you're coming in, like we offer a very competitive salary, but we do have to be in the office. We work at treatment plants that are running 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Some positions are required to be staffed 24 hours. So there's some people at night when I'm sleeping, when you're sleeping, people are working and treating water. And when it rains, more people are awake and they're staffing different things to make sure we don't flood, right? And so it seems like that, I'm not an expert on where we're at in the job market, but it seems like people today are looking for a very good work-life balance. And I will say in all the years that I've been here that this agency from the beginning has always offered a very good work-life balance. And so typically, we're here from my work hours are 8:45 to 4:30. When I leave at 4:30, in the 25 years I worked here, I've got paged at night maybe like 3 times. So in terms of work-life balance, if I got to be at my daughter's basketball game at 6 o'clock at night, there's a 99% chance I'm going to be there. I'm not going to get called in to come to work.
I think that's important. I think, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I think that's super important to understand is like, bringing out that kind of information so people hear that is very helpful. I was talking to one of my, colleagues that works with me, Landon. I'm sure you've seen him on LinkedIn. We were talking about that this morning with labor and hiring, like an 18-year-old. What would it take to hire someone like him, right? And he kind of gave me some ideas, like when they're in high school and doing these job fairs or going to them, they just had no interest. They don't have any interest. They want a high rate of pay, right? And I was comparing it to like getting into a sewer manhole, confined space entry, what that would look like to someone like his age. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, $30 an hour. I'm like, $30 an hour is It's a lot. So, and then he also said about culture and what you're describing, you know, MWRD culture. It's amazing from what I've seen, you know, on social media and stuff. And then security was the three main things he was looking at for these type of stuff. So, you know, I think MWRD brings that. That's the whole point. And I'm surprised that we can't get, like you said, more people at the door ready to sign up.
You know, I've always thought that, you know, you need to be open to all job experiences that are offered to you. And so I did work in our sewer group here, our maintenance and operations sewer group. So I actually, like you were saying, I did put on the white Tyvek suit. I did go down and was hooked up to the tripod and went down and inspected sewers and orifices and all kinds of stuff, and worked with crews that clean blockages in the sewer and whatnot. And so you just got to be open to those experiences. So now, what I gained learning at that time in my early career here at the district, now I'm over the sewer design group. So, you know, I have that experience of actually seeing the stuff in person in the sewer. And now when I see it on the plans, you know, I can tell if there's an issue or not, or, you know, offer advice to my staff, who may not have had that experience to actually go in and see what it actually really looks like inside the sewer.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've you know, can you imagine just, well, you've done it. So, you know, I mean, getting into a 116-inch sewer, you know, walking down the sewer, and it's amazing the infrastructure. Once people get to see it, you know, it's out of sight, out of mind. That's our biggest problem, is like, we don't get enough education, I think, out there, enough images, or maybe just giving more experiences for young professionals to go there. I don't know. Do you give tours and stuff like that of that kind of stuff? Like,
so the district is offering tours again, primarily of our wastewater treatment plants, or maybe some of our reservoirs. We don't, just because of, I guess, perilous nature of going into a confined space, we don't offer, you know, tours of the sewer. Or
sure.
I hear in London,
there's all the legal stuff. Yeah.
In London, I hear there's a great, you know, tour of the sewer system there. So if I ever have the opportunity, like some of London, I want to go check that out. But so interesting that you say that. So we're planning a trip to Italy this summer. We'll be in Rome, and I found out there's this awesome museum in Italy. There's one Roman aqueduct that's still in service. So you can go visit this. You can climb down all the stairs and see this aqueduct that feeds the Trevi Fountain. I think it's called the Aqua Vitis Museum. And so really excited to go see that. So you can imagine an ancient Roman aqueduct still functioning and working today. It's just amazing, you know, and that's the power of infrastructure, right? It's just,
that's the stuff we need to see more of that. I think that would be more appealing for people to understand what we do in the water sewer space, and, you know, how important it is. That's the thing, is once it stops happening, or your basement floods, as you alluded to earlier, you know, then it's like, oh, well, where did it come from? Why did it happen? You know, people start asking questions. That's where it gets, you know, their attention, so to speak. So this has been a great conversation, Lou. I truly appreciate it, man. And I wish we had more time to chat. But if people want to get a hold of you, if they're interested in learning more about MWRD, maybe employment, how can they get a hold of you, or, you know, people in MWRD?
Definitely, the agency is very easy, mwrd.org. You can sign up for a tour right on our website. You can get a hold of me. The easiest way is by email, StorinOL, so STORINOL @mwrd.org. Happy to receive emails. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not on LinkedIn every day, but I will respond to you usually in a week if somebody, you know, sends me a message on LinkedIn like Chad did. So
I love it, man. Thank you so much for being a part of this. This is very helpful, and look forward to talking to you again sometime down the road.
It was my pleasure. I love speaking about infrastructure, if you couldn't tell.
I love it. It's great. Thanks, Lou. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Infrastructure Hot Seat Podcast. We hope that this show brought you some insight on relevant topics within the infrastructure world. Please join us every 2 weeks on Tuesday for the next episode. If you're interested in being a guest on this podcast, please set up a 15-minute interview with your host at calendly.com/Chad Smeltzer.